So I want to share 5 newsletter growth strategies that I've never shared before. And the first one is start a community for subscribers to share what's working for them. And now when I say community, that could be a Facebook group, it could be a Slack channel, it could be a group chat, although that might get unwieldy. It could be whatever you want, a message board, some sort of online community where they can connect with each other to get help, to talk about, especially anytime you have a newsletter, which yours is, that which is great, that has a clear transformation, right? These people are here and they want to get to here and they're trying to
Yep.
figure it out. And everyone who's reading this newsletter is trying to figure that out. And each of them are figuring out different pieces of the puzzle. Create a way for them to connect with, to help each other and share what they're learning or struggling with each other. And when you do that, I think a lot of times people think about community and newsletter separate, but I think especially in a case
Mhm.
like yours, these things can be interwoven from the very beginning. So when someone
Mhm.
subscribes to your newsletter, that should automatically get them access to the community. And by the way, I would make it a free community. You can talk about paid community down the
Yeah.
road or whatever, but initially I would have it be a free community and it's a sort of bonus for subscribing to the newsletter and vice versa. Some people may discover the community first, and so if they join the community, they get the newsletter. So an easy way to do this is, let's say it was, if you can do it with all different kinds of communities, but if you have people apply to
Mhm.
join the community, so for example, in a Facebook group, you can ask them questions and you have one of those questions be, would you like to get my Laugh Strategy newsletter? Which if they're interested in this, they will have them drop their email address in there and then you can add them to your list. So I have a Facebook group that I started years ago called Newsletter Creators. And now the group kind of
Mhm.
runs itself. I'm not super active in it, but it's a great community of these people. And I got a lot of newsletter subscribers because every time someone would join that group, one of the questions is, would you like to get my newsletter that shares tips on how to grow your newsletter? And of course they would,
Mhm.
right? So a community can not only be super valuable, but it can also be a great growth tactic for the newsletter, especially in a world where you are, where it's like a lot of these comedians know each other, right? So if that group is
Mhm.
good, they're going to talk and be like, oh, I'm in this great Facebook group or I'm in this Discord or whatever it is, right? And when they come in, now they realize there's a newsletter. And the opposite is true.
Mhm.
They get the newsletter, and in that welcome email, you're like, hey, here's your invite to join this community. And so it works really well and is a really good way to grow a newsletter. The second newsletter growth strategy that I haven't really talked about before is connect with people who are selling products to your audience. So I've talked a lot about cross promotions and people talk about cross promotions and newsletters recommending other newsletters and
Mhm.
that kind of stuff. But they don't think a lot about the people that are selling to that audience other than going to try to get money from them and trying to get sponsorships from them. But the truth is, anyone that's selling, in your case, comedians, anyone that's selling a
Mhm.
product to comedians has some list connection audience to comedians. And you have the ability to introduce their product to other comedians. And there's value. So yes, there's the typical sponsorship of, oh, give me money and I'll promote your product to my thing. But for you,
Mhm.
especially when you're starting out, if they can send you subscribers, that's as valuable as money in especially in the early days, right? So,
Mhm.
for example, you could reach out to, and I don't know if anything off the top of your head. Well, I'll give you an example, right? Maybe this is not the best example. It's not comedians only, but it's valid. So let's say you went to some screenwriting software company. There's lots of
Mhm.
people that are writing scripts, comedy scripts, all that kind of stuff. You went to them, you said, hey, I have this newsletter. It's all about how comedy creators can make it in Hollywood, blah, blah, blah. I would be happy to
Mhm.
promote your screenwriting software free of charge in exchange for you mentioning my newsletter on social media or into your email list, in your
Yeah.
newsletter, whatever. They won't all
Mhm.
do it, but some of them will. Because for them,
Mhm.
why not? And maybe you go, hey, you know what? Hey, screenwriting company software, I'll mention you the next 4 issues. I'll mention you. You'll
Mhm.
be a sponsor, but I don't need your money. All I want you to do is email the 10,000 people in your email list or whatever it is. So viewing
Mhm.
brands or companies or anyone that's selling a product to your target audience as a potential promotional partner, really good way to grow your audience. The third growth strategy here that I haven't talked about before is what I'll call partnering up. So what I mean here is find 3 to 5 to 10 to even just one would be helpful, right? Find similar creators whose
Mhm.
target audience is comedians Maybe they have a newsletter, maybe they have a YouTube channel, maybe they're on Instagram, maybe they're on TikTok, wherever it is. They're trying to reach the same people. Find people that you can partner with to grow together because they're out there. And it doesn't have to be, yes, you could do a one-off cross promotion, but ideally you go, look, the three of us are trying to grow to this audience. We're each bringing new people into our audience all the time. We're each figuring out things that work. And let's just informally agree that we're going to work together. We're all at maybe roughly the same amount of audience size right now. And we all have around, I'm making this up, but we all have around 500, 1,000 people on our email list or whatever it is. We all want to get to 10,000. Let's do it together. And we'll share each other's content. We'll just a sort of informal thing. And it can be really successful. And what a lot of people don't realize is a high percentage of people that have built huge audiences did it in part by doing this. They didn't do it alone. They partnered with other people and they grew together. And anytime any one of you has a spike, it benefits all of you. So finding some partners would be a good thing. And for you in the comedy space, like a couple just off the top of my head that came to mind, there's a guy named Matt Ruby in New York. Great guy, writes the newsletter for comedians, right? Reaching out to him and be like, hey, what we do is different, but similar. Can we help each other in some way? And Joel Byers is another guy who I believe is in Atlanta, and he does stuff on YouTube, and he actually has a community I think he has a membership. I think it's a paid membership. I'm not sure, but I know he's tapped into comedians and he's more focused on helping them. I think a little bit with the business, but I also think with their act and all that kind of stuff. But there are people out there. And so finding them, and all you need is a couple partners, can really help you go a long way. The fourth newsletter growth strategy that I haven't talked about much before is build relationships with what I call offline community connectors. So everyone is always so focused on how do I find the people that have the followers, the subscribers? They're always focused on the online stuff. And depending on your niche, they completely overlook that there's offline people that have connections that are just as valuable. So especially I know from having worked in the comedy world and booking comedy shows and stuff, in every city, there are those people who are booking the local comedy shows, the indie comedy. They're the booker, they're the producer, they're they run the room, they own the venue, whatever. But in every city, there's a handful of those people. And those people know and have interactions with every stand-up in the city all the time.
Yeah.
Which means if you reach out to that person who books, like I know from being in LA, there are people, and forget not just the clubs, like not the big Hollywood Improv, Comedy Store, or whatever, but like local indie shows that they're interacting with these comics all the time. They have their emails, they have their everything. And if you can go to them and be like, hey, I have this thing, I know they're really going to like it. Check it out. If you like it, tell people about it, spread the word. Right. Or maybe depending what it is, maybe you're like, oh, I'll sponsor your show. I'll give you, it's a small indie show, whatever, or I'll promote it, whatever you can do. But those people, when you start to think about offline, who's talking to all of the people that I want to reach, they're really valuable. And no one's reaching out to them to do that. No one's reaching out to like the local indie comedy show producer to do anything. Hey, can I put flyers on the tables in the green room, in the whatever? Like, it's easy stuff and it doesn't have to cost a lot of money, and you can really get directly to your target audience. And then the fifth one, the last thing here that I wanted to suggest is pitch yourself to other comedians' podcasts and tell them you'll link to the episode in your newsletter if they book you. So with comedians, obviously, every comedian these days has a podcast. And while a lot of their audience are not other comedians, a lot of their audience are other comedians, especially smaller shows and especially shows that are talking about comedy. You can be a different type of guest for them. And especially with the type of content you're creating your newsletter, it doesn't matter that they don't know your newsletter or they don't know who Jerrica is. You can go, hey, you have a show talking to comedians. You want me to come on and tell you what Kevin Hart did that worked? Like, you want me to give you the blueprint? A show that maybe is for screenwriters, like, you want me to come on and tell you what Issa Rae did and how she made this happen? That's really interesting. And it's good content for them. And I think there's a high likelihood that you could get booked. And that would, again, get you a lot of new newsletter subscribers.